You can see I don't want it there. That's going to be out of tune. I want it here. Directly over the bar. So not that. We want it right there. Today I'm going to be doing a breakdown of slide guitar technique and specifically what to do with your slide hand. So first off, I want to just say I do have a more detailed breakdown of slide guitar picking and muting technique. So that's going to be what you're doing with your picking hand. If you want to check that out, there'll be a link somewhere to that one. And I also have a slide guitar beginner's guide, which will go over a breakdown of everything that you would need to know if you're just getting into slide guitar or if you want a refresher. So that'll be up there as well. So let's get into it. The most important thing is going to be picking which finger you want to use for the slide. So you have a couple different options. A lot of it is just going to be a personal preference thing. I recommend experimenting, trying things out, trying different ways. But once you decide on a finger that seems like it's, the one you want to commit to, definitely commit to it and don't jump back and forth. Once you make a decision, stick to it, and then that way you'll start to develop the technique around that decision and you're not, flip-flopping and you're never going to really get comfortable. So make a decision and stick to it. I like to use the ring finger for the slide. For me, I have these kind of skinny fingers, so I tried the pinky early on and it just felt a little too flimsy. I didn't really feel that comfortable with it, so I started to commit to the ring finger and that's been working for me. What the pinky allows for is you have your three main other fingers for doing other type of chording and stuff. So if you're someone who does want a little bit more of your main digits available, maybe the pinky will be for you. I've been able to work around it with my ring finger. I've had no issues. Up to you. You can also use your middle finger. I believe Joe Walsh, to name just one example, was using his middle finger to play, so that's also an option. You want to stay away from your index though. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we want to have some leftover fingers that are going to be behind the slide that'll help with some of the technique and muting. So that's a little bit on which finger to be using. All right, so why did I say not to use your index finger? When we're playing slide guitar, you may or may not know this, but if you watch my picking and muting video and you're familiar with the picking technique, you know that we lose a lot of the control of the strings that we don't want to be playing versus the ones we want to be playing when this, big bar thing is sliding all up and down. We lose a lot of the control that we otherwise, would have with our other fingers to mute the strings we don't want to sound. Obviously, your picking hand is going to do a lot of this for you, but we can also utilize these other fingers behind the slide. So these are the ones that are going to be between the slide and the headstock of your guitar. We can use these other fingers to just lay down behind the slide, and they'll give us a little bit extra security when we're playing to make sure these other strings aren't sounding, and also a good way to kind of just give you a little bit of an anchor so your hands aren't kind of flying around like this, and they do help to really clean up a lot of the buzzing. That's something I'm really working on lately too, making sure those fingers are kind of laying down there to minimize a lot of the overtones and buzzing and vibrations that really come out when you're playing acoustic and you're mic'd up especially. And then when you lay your slide down, you want to just be gently laying it on the strings. You're going to have to play around with the feel and the pressure here, but you don't want to be pressing too hard to where your slide is actually making the strings touch the frets. So we don't want to be... See how you can hear the frets in there? Your slide, that's too much pressure. Too little pressure is going to be... cause that awful buzzing noise. Don't want that either. We want to just have it just gently. So if we have our slide here, got my fingers kind of flying up in the air. What we want to do is just I'm going to lay my index and my middle finger down next to the slide. I'm not pressing, just enough to mute the strings behind. And then I got my slide, I'll lay back down in front of it. And these, fingers will follow you all around. Basically, like if you don't have the slide on, you're going to be just sliding them like this, and then you're gonna have your slide in front of you. Now, once you get really good with your muting, with your picking hand, it's not gonna be super important to always have them down there, but it's good practice to just get in the habit of doing it. You know, it's not the worst thing in the world. They come up a lot of times when you're playing and you're really into it. You forget about it sometimes, and it's not the end of the world, especially when you're kind of rocking and it's getting loud. It's not the end of the world, but you're really kind of trying to be as clean and on top of things. It's good practice to keep those fingers down. All right, the next thing I'm gonna go over is how to make the notes sound as in tune as possible. So this is what we would call intonation. Something that kind of blew my mind early on. And I was just, used to just playing, fretted notes. I wasn't worried about, sliding or anything. I had always thought that the notes are actually in the center of what we would call the bars of the fret. So if I'm trying to play in the 5th fret, I would have thought that you would, want the slide in between the bars here, in between the 4th and the 5th bar or the fret. I would have thought that's where the in tune note is. In reality though, it's actually over the metal of the bar of that 5th fret. I know for some of you that was probably obvious, but for me at the time years ago, I was like, I had no idea. What we want to be doing when we're sliding, to make sure we're trying to play notes in tune, make sure that if you're trying to play in the 5th fret on that 1st string, keep in mind my guitar's in a, it's tuned down a bit, so it might be in a different, this, might be a different note than yours, but if I'm trying to play that 1st string in the 5th fret, I want to make sure that my slide is as over that bar as much as possible. So you can see I don't want it there. That's going to be out of tune. I want it here, directly over the bar. So not that. I want it right there. So not this. Something I try to keep in mind, again, it's not the end of the world, but good practice would be to, as you're playing, try to keep the slide as vertical as you can. So like not rotating it as much. We want it to be as vertical, kind of in line with the metal of the frets as possible, and then over the metal to try to be as in tune as possible. One other thing I want to go over is just what to do with your thumb. So you want to kind of just be gently resting it to kind of anchor your hand there. You don't even have to really use your thumb. Sometimes when you're really kind of rocking, you might not even really need it, but for the most part, I find it most comfortable to have it kind of gently resting there. You don't want to be pressing too hard because, again, we're not pressing the notes down. We just want to be sliding with the slide. So you don't need a lot of pressure. All right, so I hope that video was helpful. It'd be great if you could give me a thumbs up if you did like it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I have a lot of slide guitar and also non-slide guitar related content on there, so check that out. It'd be great if you could subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you.